Welcome, Vincent, to the podcast. I want to first introduce you to our audience. So go ahead and say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me on. It's so funny because it's like when it's like, tell me about yourself. I feel like a cat with nine lives. I'm kind of like, which life are we talking about? Because it's shifted so much. Right now, we're fortunate. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. We homeschool our three boys, and the whole idea of freedom, living a life of freedom, especially these days, in terms of what we have options for us, is a huge
Absolutely.
deal for us. That's why the podcast is called Total Life Freedom. That's our business that we run. So the idea of living that life of freedom is a huge deal for us.
Absolutely. No, so I usually kind of give an introduction in the podcast about, who I'm interviewing today, but because our topic today, the entrepreneurial life, the kind of creating the life that you want to live, that total life freedom,
Mhm.
it really goes along with who you were then in your first 9 of your lives and then who you are now and how did you get there. So could you give us kind of like, I guess, like a background of like maybe where you were, maybe you weren't happy, maybe you needed to pivot something, and then like how did you get to creating this company that is total life freedom?
Yeah, there's a couple different iterations of it where I was a terrible student. Going back to when, so
I love it.
people are like, oh, you need to have great grades, you need to follow rules very well. I didn't do any of that well. So I think a lot of times I speak to those type of people that they're creative and they're smart, but they don't fit into the school system and they don't fit into the rule followers of like, hey, you need to do what everybody else is doing. I remember when I was 17 years old and I was on the verge of graduating from high school, which I wasn't even sure I was going to graduate. And a friend of mine
Oh
said to me, well,
my.
what are you going to do with your life? Because they were all going, they had their colleges set. And I wasn't. I didn't know where I was going. I was working. I had my own jobs. And I remember saying to him, I have no idea, but I'll figure it out. And I remember not knowing why I was so confident when I said that, because I wasn't good in school, but I was able to hold conversations with adults. I was able to be creative. So internally, I knew I was going to be okay. But the way that the system told me I wasn't going to be okay, that I
Yeah.
wasn't sure about myself. So I went through a dark period. I went through years of just working. I got in a lot of trouble. I got arrested. I did all the things, that you probably shouldn't do. But I had, but I didn't know where I was going with my life. So one day I woke up and I had this nightmare and I went downstairs and I was like, what am I doing with my life? And for the first time, I'm 22, first time I'm even worrying about this. And my dad, who I didn't get along with, you can imagine the way that I was as a youth, why we didn't get along. But he came downstairs and I said, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. For the first time, I'm actually concerned. And so nonchalantly, he said, you love traveling. You love sports. That's all I did was watch sports and listen to music. So you love traveling, you love sports, you like taking pictures. Why don't you be a photographer? And I was like, a sports photographer. And he's like, yeah, there's people on the field. That's their career. And I was like, nobody ever told me that was a job. Like that's like the greatest job in the
Interesting.
world, right? That I could possibly be at 20, who the person I was. And
Yeah.
I had nothing to lose. So unlike all my friends that had, great grades and they had these good colleges to go to, I had literally a blank slate. What do you want to decide? I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I started buying tickets in New York where I lived to all the different games. And I bought a camera and I would sneak up to the front row and I would ask the photographers questions. So that became my first real school. I would sneak up to the photo and I'd
Huh.
be like, what film are you using? What kind of camera? Why'd you take? I would bring clippings from the day before and say, how'd you do this? I would interview them and they started to befriend me. I did that for a year and a half until I got an internship with the National Hockey League and then with Newsday, a newspaper in New York. And that started a 22-year career as a journalist and a sports photographer. So that's how it started.
Wow. So I mean, okay, so I love your unconventional way of wrapping this around because I think there's a huge group of people that feel just like you did. And I'm in that age group right now. I'm in the 22, 23, 24 range. And I
Mhm.
think I'm just going to wrap myself across all three of those because we're in this, like, we all graduated into the COVID world.
Yep.
And a lot of us are either thriving, surviving, part of that, and or we're just kind of like, what is there to
What do we
life? Like,
do?
what are we gonna do? And I mean, I've had this conversation more than enough times myself where I just sit here and it's a sad thing. Let's talk about the system. The system literally, I think, can set you up to thrive or it can set you up for failure. because I personally, I'm not trying to say it in a weird way. I have a lot of degrees where a 22-year-old shouldn't have this many degrees, but at the same time, I don't have the drive to go do the 9 to 5, go into the professional job. Cause like to me, I'm like, that just sounds like my soul would die. So I've been doing all these like unconventional things, and people look at it like I'm almost failing because I have all these degrees. So I find that
Mm.
interesting. And I want to ask you, did anybody ever try to talk you into maybe going to college, maybe taking that conventional way? And how did you set it up in your mind that it's okay that you didn't do that, or it's okay that you weren't doing that?
Well, I had see. I'm a lot older, so this is
Yeah.
you're talking
I'm
late
ta-
'80s, early '90s. That this, so I
uh,
was going to so I went to college. I went to community college. I failed out of college 5 times or dropped out.
okay.
Failed out or dropped out. Criminal justice. Quite ironically, I got arrested. I got arrested while I was a major for criminal
Oh
justice.
no.
And the police thought that was very funny. They're like, "What's your major?" Criminal? Like, that's you can kiss that goodbye. So that career was gone when I got arrested. And so a bunch of different industries that I was like, I tried it out, dropped out. It wasn't until my fifth or sixth major of photography that I said, "This is what I like doing." What's funny
Wow.
about it is that was at community college. When I was 26, I went back to college because I was a freelancer. So I was doing what everybody's doing, freelancing on the side,
Right.
making some money, trying things out. And my editor said, if you really want to, Ohio University has a great journalism program. So that's where I wanted to go. That's the career I wanted. So I went back to school at 26. The difference was I was motivated and I was focused on doing well. If I would have went there at 18, I would have screwed it all up. I would have partied and blew it. At
Yeah.
26, I walked in and I was deadly focused on being the best that I could be. Wound up not only meeting my wife of now almost 20 years there,
Oh my God.
but I became the William Randolph Hearst National Championship champion, like the top college photographer in the country after on graduation, and which led to job offers and like that. So the power of the idea of like, oh, everybody should go to school at 18 and get your degree. It would have been such a waste for me to do it then. Not saying go later, but for me, it was perfect. So I did go to school. It did work out for me, but it wasn't the be all end all of like, hey,
Yeah.
because the problem with it was they taught me what went wrong was when I went to school. I was a freelancer before that. They kind of guided me to be an employee, to be a staff photographer to newspaper. So I went and did that after I graduated, got a good job. My wife did as well together. But I remember within the first month, just like you're feeling, I felt trapped. It wasn't
Yeah.
quite 9 to 5, but they controlled my schedule, and I always knew I needed to run my own show. So I did that for years, but I always felt trapped in a job.
Right. And it's interesting because I've talked to a few other people that have that same feeling now as it is, but I guess I'm not saying I'm not dedicated, because there are things I'm very dedicated about, right? You know what I mean? Like I get up at 3:30 in the morning to run and like to have my own time and my space and things like that because I love it and that's my time. But at the same time, when you're putting me in a job I don't like, and I've worked many jobs. I'm not saying I've never worked. I'm not one of
Yeah.
those people that went into a 9 to 5 or said they've never been in a 9 to 5 that say they don't want to work one. I've worked many of them and I just quit all of them because I was like, I can't. I'm not doing this. Like it's not working. So I'm in that weird space.
Yes.
Now I want to ask you, so now you feel trapped and you have this entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
How long did it take you and what woke you up to follow that entrepreneurial spirit?
That's such a great question. It really is, because I've done a ton of interviews and that question that way hasn't been asked.
Oh,
What
good.
happened was I got very comfortable. We bought a house. So this is, 2000 we got hired, bought a house, and we got married in 2002, bought a house in 2003. So started to do the American dream thing, right?
Right.
I had no debt all of my life. All of a sudden we had a mortgage. All of a sudden I had a car payment. Never had a car payment before, never liked it. And then we started getting our money together. Once we got married, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm starting to get squeezed. And we started listening to Dave Ramsey, and he was very new in the financial world. Most people did, but I started hearing on the radio,
Right.
started getting into that. And what happened was this: in 2004, we wanted to start a family. So Elizabeth got pregnant with our first son. And you start to wake up a little bit. And I'm like, wait a second. So she's making 30,000 a year. I'm making 32 a year, and we're working like crazy. So we're working long hours.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I won International Sports Photographer of the Year. So top sports photographer in the world in terms of the top. So it was crazy.
Right.
So all of a sudden in Evansville, Indiana, I'm getting this national attention. I walk into my boss's office upon my review, and we're 8 months in, 1 month away from having a baby. I just win this amazing award that gave so much recognition to the newspaper, and I got a 3% raise. And they said, we would love to give you more, but we can't. There's no money there. And literally that moment I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't raise a family like this. I saw the way everybody was in the newsroom, how disgruntled everybody was, how people didn't have money. And I'm like, I can't live like this for 30 years. I
That's
can't.
soul crushing.
Soul crushing.
It is soul crushing.
So we went home, and I went home that day. I'll never forget that day. It was June, and it was hot, and the sun's coming through my window, and I'm calling my dad, who's got his own business in New York. And I'm like, can I work for you? Because I used to work for him when I was a teenager. And he said no. So I'm like, now my dad's rejecting me. I'm like, life is awful. Like everybody's rejecting me.
Have you already quit your job? Did you quit your job when you walked out of Okay.
No,
I just wanted to make sure, because it sounded
okay.
like you walked out done and that needed
In my
another
mind.
job. In your mind, you were done. Okay.
I'm not that dumb. I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb. So I go home and I call my dad. I said, can I work for you? He said, no. He goes, the business is way different than when you worked for me. Everything's changed. You're in Indiana. I'm in New York. We can't make this work. And then he said something that changed my life. He said, I've been trying to tell you this, but you haven't listened. He said, maybe you'll listen now. He said, you have a skill, but you're not using it correctly. And I think this goes to everybody.
I like
this goes to so many people that are listening. So you have a skill, but you're not using it correctly. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you've become a really good photographer. He goes, you weren't. And then you started, you were terrible. You were just learning, but you've become really good. You're winning all these awards, but you're settling. He said to me, he goes, you're settling for $32,000 a year in benefits. That's what you're settling for. But you can go shoot pro sports on your own. You can go do weddings. You could do commercial work. You could do all this other stuff. You can set your price, and you can set when you want to work and when you don't want to work. And you're giving all that up for security. And when my dad said that to me, when you have your father, that's something like, it goes the opposite. Usually the father, like, get a steady job, be secure, right? Life is tough.
Especially when you're about to start a family
or
about to have a kid.
Have a baby. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple months away.
A month away. Less than a month away.
Less than a month away. I mean, that's even more surprising.
He said, he goes, you are settling. When you hear when you're 32 years old and you hear your dad tell you that you're settling, it's really hard.
That's almost worse than him just being disappointed in you.
Totally. Because it's like, is that how I'm going to live my life? Just kind of lame? Like just getting by, meeking by on just enough money and have somebody else control my time. So I literally went over to the phone book back in the day when there were phone books, if anybody remembers those things. And I looked up photographers.
I don't know what those are. I'm kidding.
No, I know, right? You probably don't. And I started calling different photographers to see if I could be their assistant. Every one of them turned me down, even though they saw me in the newspaper. They saw my name every day. They knew that I was good. They all turned me down. And I took the phone book and I threw the phone book against the wall. And there's the saying, like, if you can't beat them, join them. And I said out loud, if you can't join them, we're going to beat them. And I called my wife. I said, we're starting a business. And she's like, what? Now she's 8 months pregnant. And I told her that we're starting a business. We've never done a business before. And so we're going to do wedding photography. We're going to make the money to get us out of this job. And then we're going to live the life from there. And literally, the first wedding was $500. The first one was free. Then it was $500, then $1,500. And we went all in. And all we did was we lived, Elizabeth quit her job, stayed home with Andrew. I worked my job for 3 more years while we built this business. But every dollar of that business went towards paying off all of our debt. So what happened was within less than 3 years, we had paid off all of our debt, including our house, from our wedding business, built the wedding business up to where it made more money than the both of us working combined. And then I quit my job, and that's when freedom started.
Wow. And then, so was this your goal where you knew you could stop working when you made a certain amount of money or when you saw stability?
It was a little bit of all of it. It was almost this barometer of, well, we wanted to get out of debt because we were on the Dave Ramsey thing. So
Right.
First focus was let's build a business to pay off the debt. If it's $1,000 a month, it's $1,000 a month. But then it starts going up. And then you're
Yeah.
just shoveling that money onto the debt. And all of a sudden, the
Yeah.
car payment's gone and the furniture payment's gone and the student loan is gone. And then it's like,
That's
can we
awesome.
pay off a house? Like, why not? I can
Yeah.
still work in this job. I am young. Have energy. I could do the job and do the business. Let's go for a little while. The kids are little. By that point, Nolan was about to be born. Let's just go. 2007 was the year of work. We just went and did 39 weddings. And then, so once you started seeing it, like, oh, the income is up here. We're making way more than we made at the newspaper, and we have less debt. We knew at any point during those year and a half we could quit, but we set a goal like, let's pay the house off and then let's quit. So there's nothing there.
I
And
love it.
and and that was the thing. So then all of a sudden you go from being trapped in this job, making very little money, working like crazy for 2 years, and then you wake up and you go, I have these two beautiful little kids. I've got my amazing wife, and we can do whatever we want every day except for 20 days out of the year we had to work. That's what it was, like almost immediately once we decided to make that move.
So, I mean, this sounds absolutely amazing, but I have to highlight because we all hear this in theory, right? What were the struggles that you went through during this time period?
Oh,
Because I know, right? There
lots.
there had to be more because it's so easy to hear somebody talk and say, "Oh yeah, we worked and threw money at our debt. We got out of debt. It was perfect. It was and now we're here because it was
No.
all perfect and sunshine, right?" How did you and get your wife on the same page? Because so many couples
Yeah.
say they're on the same page, but you can see behind the scenes where they're just not. And then, of course, like how did it just snowball from there?
Well, I gave you the highlight reel. I don't want to pretend at all.
Absolutely.
It was brutal. Like when we say the
Yeah.
year of work for that year, it was terrible. We did weddings three nights. We did a triple. It's called a triple in the wedding business. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Usually happens on a holiday weekend. You have a Memorial Day, so you have a Friday
Yeah.
wedding. We took everything. If as long as in the price range, we took it. So I'm working full-time job. I'm getting off of work, then going to shoot a wedding, another one, then driving to St. Louis for the third one. I
Oh,
was
wow.
driving home from that third wedding, and my eyes were so tired that it felt like the street lights were falling because my eyelids kept falling.
Oh,
That's how
man.
tired. So we were exhausted. We made so many mistakes. Contractually, we didn't know anything. Didn't know anything about business. So
Yeah.
we had a very low retainer. So we got a $250 retainer on one wedding for a $3,500 wedding, right? Because we wanted to book the job because we were
Right.
desperate. That's all you need to give us, $250 to lock in the date. Well, the last two payments were going to be 3 months beforehand and then the week of. Well, about 2 months beforehand, we realized the mom never sent the payment in. I call her up and say, oh, the second payment's been past due. She goes, oh, I forgot to tell you, we had a family friend that takes pictures. We decided to have them do the wedding. We're not going to need you. And I said,
Oh,
well, we have a contract and you owe us the pay. She goes, we're not going to do it. We're not going to pay you. That was our biggest client of the year and just backed out. I mean, there was moments like that. We messed the first year, you mess everything up in business. You don't know.
oh, big time.
So it was a consistent that first year, but like anybody I
Wow.
try to teach and coach this, when you get to the beginning, when you get to year 2 and especially year 3, all of a sudden you do a quarter of the work and you make twice as much money. You reduce the stress, you figure that you optimize everything. So many people quit before they get to that point. So we
Right.
just weren't going to quit.
Yeah, no, I mean, if once you quit, I mean, I don't say quit, sometimes you have to pivot,
Yeah.
but like at the same time, but yeah, a lot of people just drop out because they don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see that the systems that they're putting in place now, although there are a lot of work to put in place,
Yes.
are going to reward you so much down the road.
Oh,
That's it's just grit after grit after grit. Now, kind of highlighting what you said, how many, you're coming home at like probably the wee hours of the morning at some point being so tired. How many hours were you working? Because a lot of people will think that entrepreneurs wake up and we have our coffee in the morning and then you just like read two magazines and we have this we do what we want when we want type of deal, but like that's just not reality. Like we're working at night in the mornings. What was your work schedule like, that grind to try to get to the point where you got the freedom?
I was obsessive about it.
Right.
I was obsessive.
Like
You know,
most of us.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I do think there is some reality in the way you just described what it's like in some ways. We now live a life like that on many,
Time.
many days. Because when you optimize it, you know what to do and what not to do. You know who to connect with and who not to connect with. You just figure things out so much quicker that we do have way more free time now than ever. We can do those things, but it's only on the back of all that work. And when you're focused and you're obsessed for a period of time on something, you're going to get it done if you don't stop, if you continue. So I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, I'm sure it drove Elizabeth crazy, but there were years where it was like, I cannot not make this work. This has to work.
Right.
So you're up till 12 o'clock doing research and studying and knowing, oh, what this website or that website.
Oh, man.
I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit. I think if you hear that and that scares you, or you don't want to do that work and you'd rather somebody do it for you and you just want to get paid, this is probably not for you. Entrepreneurs know you're an entrepreneur. The way you describe, the way you go about your work, that's an entrepreneurial. You can't imagine working for somebody else.
Yes.
The whole thing of you'll put in 80 hours working for yourself way more excitedly than you'll do 40 hours for somebody else.
Yes. Even if it comes out to like, you paying yourself $2.99
It
right
doesn't
now,
matter.
you're like, that's fine. I'll take it.
Because what people don't
Absolutely.
understand that are on the fence about it. When I work for somebody else, like when I took a picture, taking photography for the newspaper, every bit of referral that came from that picture went back to the newspaper.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
If you think of it this
Yeah.
way, whatever you're in, coaching, whatever it is, if you coach for a business because you want that security and you do a great job, who's getting the credit for it? Who's getting the next client? They are. And they
Yeah.
should,
It's
because they
true.
own the business. Right? They were
Yeah.
smart enough to hire you to do it.
They made the business, they did the same thing essentially you want to do.
Exactly. So don't
Absolutely.
get upset if you don't get the referrals when you're the employee, because the business came from them. You just did good work for them. But when you own your own business, even if it's a small amount of money, even if it's $100, whatever it is for whatever you're doing, when you get a referral
Yeah.
and you've raised your prices to $200, people go, oh, that's what the price is now, so I'm going to pay it. Everything piggybacks on back to you when you have your own business. When you do it for somebody else, you don't get any of it. So when you get cut out, when you get fired, or when you quit, you need to find somebody else that pays you that salary. But there's no referral that comes from that. And this is a referral based world in the entrepreneur. It's all about relationships.
Yeah.
It's all about the quality you do. And if you own your own business, it just keeps piling on top of that.
Absolutely. And a lot of people too, just highlighting the entrepreneurial spirit. It seems like the work excites us, right? Self-growth, getting better does excite us. Now that doesn't mean that we hold it so tight where we never outsource. Of course, like there's a point where we want this business to fuel our lifestyle, not become our lifestyle where we're so stressed out and be working like that. We want it to fuel our lifestyle later on. And it all comes with that drive to want to get better. And we just choose to put it in another outlet. Now, you had this photography business. How
Mhm.
did you get from the photography business into the business you have now for Total Life Freedom?
Yeah. So we did that for a good 9 years. It was a great
Wow.
life. It was a very chilled life. It was we raised a family. So we wound up having
That's
three boys.
awesome.
Now they're 16, 14, and 10. And we homeschooled. So we decided along the way, hey, this is the way we want to live our life. We want to travel as a family. It wasn't about making as much money as we possibly could. We are never going to be in that stratosphere. It was a life of freedom that we wanted, which meant any day we could do what we want to do, and we want to do it with our kids, and we want to raise them and teach them the way that we want. So that was the
I love
goal.
it.
So for 2008, 2000, all those years into the 2014, 2015, it was a really chilled lifestyle with a great business that nobody knew who we were except our clients, and we lived, and it was fantastic. But there came a point where I started getting really bored. And that's just my nature and my personality. If I feel like I've
Yeah.
gone beyond where I'm going to go with something, I can keep challenging myself. But one time we had a wedding. This happened a few times, but I went through an adrenal fatigue, and it was awful.
Oh.
And I
Oh.
couldn't sleep, and I was tired. So we did this wedding, and I'm in the middle of this adrenal fatigue, and I show up at the groom's house and for the getting ready pictures. I don't remember anything. The entire day, Elizabeth shot her side, I shot mine, and I drove home that night thinking I screwed that one up. Like, I don't remember anything good. Usually my head will be, it'll be going through my head
Right.
about the different pictures we took and how do we do with this. Didn't remember anything. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be our first complaint. It's going to be the first one that says you screwed up. Elizabeth got the pictures ready, sent it to them, and they were like, this is amazing. You captured everything. This is exactly what we wanted. And I was like, a lot of people would be like, that's beautiful. I was like, I'm done. If I can sleepwalk through a wedding and get the pictures I need because I'm so in tune with it, I'm not being challenged anymore. So I went home and I said to Elizabeth, I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And she's amazing. She's like, what are you going to do? I said, well, I was shooting a wedding and I was coaching the DJ on his business because he's a great DJ, but he has a terrible business. So I
Yeah.
sat there over dinner coaching him on how to make his business better. He loved it. And I didn't want to go out and shoot the wedding anymore. I wanted to keep talking to him. I said, I think I want to do that. I think I want to do some type of a coaching for entrepreneurs. That's literally how it started that day.
Wow.
And that led to a coaching business for entrepreneurs, to writing a book called Freelance to Freedom, to starting a mastermind, then starting multiple masterminds, then building a community around that, and speaking, and then the podcasting, and just one on top of the other. So that's how it started.
Now, did you keep is the photography business still going with other photographers, or did you shut that one down?
No, we had the option of, keeping our name and having associate photographers. We had the option of doing it part-time, and we basically just said we're done. The funny thing about it, we said we're not taking any more weddings once my book came out. We booked one wedding and we were on a 4-month road trip. It was going to be when we came back from that. And on the road trip, it was the last one. It was going to be the last hurrah. And she emailed and she said, hey, I know we did a deposit. I know we're not going to get it back, but the wedding's off and we're not going to need you.
Ooh.
So literally in the parking lot in Durango, Colorado, Elizabeth's coming out with a suitcase. And I said, well, that last wedding canceled. I guess the business is over. And we're like, okay, that's it. And that was it.
Oh my God.
That was it.
I don't know what's
That's
more heartbreaking, for you guys or for her, if the wedding was called
Oh,
off.
for her.
I know that.
Obviously, we were excited.
Oh
We
man.
booked it thinking, we did it because it was a friend of a friend. And it was a referral, but it was like,
Right.
we didn't really want to do it. And then when she canceled, I felt so bad for her, but I'm like, it was literally
You're
full
done.
steam ahead with the next business.
It's a clean cut.
Yeah.
Now, how long have you had this business?
About
How long
4
ago
years.
was that?
About
3
4
years.
years we've been doing this. Yeah. The book came out 2018, and it's been growing since then.
What has been the most rewarding aspect of the coaching business?
Oh, the relationships in this world, and then the lives that get changed by it. We have a guy in our mastermind that, I could be a pain. Like I'm a New York Italian. I will get very direct with you, and I don't sugarcoat it. And some people get mad about that, and some people can't handle it, and I totally get that. But the people that get it, and the people that want it really want it. So he was in this guy, John Vandermeulen, was in this Amazon business, and it wasn't working, and it was really having a hard time with it. And he was in our mastermind, and we were friends as well. And we got enough, and he was quitting. He was quitting not only the mastermind, but his business. He was going to get a job, which is what he did not want to do. And I sat on the phone with him for 2.5 hours. It wasn't a paid call. It was just friend to friend. And I was like, so you're just going to quit? And he's like, I don't know what else to do. And so I challenged him on some stuff. I'm like, you're going to email me every day with what you did, because I don't think you're doing the work that you need to do. And you're kind of, getting stuck in this cycle of negativity. So he emailed me daily, messaged me daily on it. And then what's so cool is last year, he emailed me, goes, I got an offer. So he kept with it, built the business, got back on track, emailed me last year. He's part of the mastermind. And he was like, I think I got an offer to sell the business because he's got another thing that he's building.
That's awesome.
And he sold the business for almost $500,000 and walked away and put that all into the next business. And it's like, now life is just fantastic. And a $500,000 business that he sold that was dead in the water and he was about to walk away from. So those conversations, all that stuff that goes into the success of other people's business and their lives and their families, by far, has nothing to do with me anymore. It's not about our goal. It used to be all about me. It used to be all about what I want. What are my selfish goals?
Yeah.
Now it's generous goals. How do we do this to help other people get there?
I mean, that in itself it gives me goosebumps to think about that, because it's almost like miracle stories that some people love to read. I love hearing like those business stories where it was like, they were like rock bottom, I'm done, this is terrible. And now it's like, look at what came of it about it. And imagine if you would have just quit. if you let him just walk away, if you're like, all right, have fun, good luck, that is so inspiring.
It
I
it
love
it
that.
it is, and it's like, and you see it, and you see them change as people. That's the
Yeah.
cool thing. Their confidence, the way that they teach their children, the way that, think about the disgruntled parent that didn't do well in life, and they go, you better just, like, right, settle for a job. Life's tough out there. Buckle up, because it's not. Or the one that did well and succeeded and could be like, hey, I can confidently say to you, if you put the work in, this will be good, or you should do. We had another Courtney Wisely's in our group, and she came to us as a referral from a friend of mine named Ken Carfagno, and she was amazing at automation, just phenomenal of helping cleaning business owners automate their business. She would do it for free. I'm like, that's really
Wow.
generous, but she had no money. And so she would do these, 3-day retreats, automating these. And so I'm listening to her. I'm like, do you realize how valuable this is? And she goes, I don't really know much about money. I don't know how to make money. So she joined the mastermind.
Oh,
We beat her up on Sierra. The
oh,
first
that's so
2 weeks,
sad.
because we all saw this potential in her. We were like, this is
Right.
crazy. And I didn't think she was coming back. I thought we were probably gonna have to kick her out, because she was fighting back at everything, very defensive. Well, she got it. She decided to charge. She charged for this retreat and then sold it out. Doubled her price. Sold it out again. Doubled again. Sold. All of a sudden, she's making six figures within less than a year from this business, 6 months. Well, then COVID happens, shuts the entire business down. Everything, she went from bottom to top to bottom, shuts the whole. She comes to us. She's like, I don't know what to do. It's all gone. Just like that. March of 2020, it's all gone. And we're like, why can't you do the same thing online? Again, can't do it. Very defensive. They don't want it
Yeah.
online.
Every excuse.
Just the mindset. So she goes and does it. So she's an action taker, and she's really smart. Within 2 weeks, she had the online platform built for this thing. And 6 months after that, got to six figures with that business. Less than 6 months later,
Wow.
2021, she will make more money this year than she did her entire life combined.
Holy crap. That's awesome.
Is that crazy?
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
It's just, even with the stubborn attitude, that's fantastic. It's all about action.
It's action, and she
Action.
has a niche and an
I love it.
expertise in something that we're all extraordinary in something, and we don't realize it. So we wind up, if we're really good in one thing, we wind up going to what's basic. She's extraordinary in something. She knew what it was, and she focused on that. And so many times we're told, don't do that. And if you can have your niche that you can go towards those people, and sky's the limit. Now she's writing her first book. It's just fantastic.
I love it. Now, kind of like my last question to you before we wrap it up into our speed round. How have you changed starting this business and evolved with these business owners? What kind of mindset changes have you seen?
I think I'm less selfish. I think that's the biggest change.
I love
I
it.
really do. And that's, I have a book coming out titled The Wealth of Connection. And the first part of it, we talk about generous goals and selfish goals. My entire life was selfish goals. I couldn't say it then.
Yeah.
I didn't know it then, but it was all about me. How do I get what I want? How do I get in here? How do I meet these? It was all about me. And it wasn't until later on, and doing this was huge in terms of helping other people, where your generous goals have to go on top of your selfish goals. Meaning, that's cool that you want to buy a $500,000 house. I love that goal. It's a selfish goal. It's for you. That's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, but people do. It's bad. It's not bad. It's just Bob Berg has a great line, which is, how to make money is not a bad question. It's just a bad first question. Meaning, how are you helping? So if your generous goals, meaning with this with your podcast, you want to impact people in this way, and
yes,
that's your number one thing. The success that you're going to get financially from it is going to come by doing that work. You're not going to get the money. So that shift for me was the biggest change, where the work that I do is about the generous goals that we need to set to help other people, to collaborate, to connect, to create things. All the things that I want, the house, the place, and the beach, anything that comes by doing that work first. And that was the biggest shift for me.
I love it. I mean, I have to just add in something that you kind of made me think back to something my mom's always told me. She always told me, don't worry about what you're doing. She's like, money will come. She's like, just do something you love. And the way that you just worded it, I understand everything now. It's do that generous goal. Find that generous goal. Find that thing that's going to impact other people. And if you're good at it, hopefully, financially, we all need to live. Like, hopefully the money will come.
Yes.
I love that.
I push back on the just do what you love. I agree, but I don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's the only thing, because I can love any type of hobby, but if nobody
That's
cares
true.
and I'm not helping somebody, I'm not getting paid for it. But if you do something, if you make sure that the thing that you love is helping other people build something, you're going to do well. That's what I've had to
There you
learn.
go.
I have to love helping other people, because if I don't do that, what value am I adding? It's got to be helping someone. It doesn't have to be one-to-one. It could be through tech. It could be, but if you're helping other people get where they need to go, that's where I think the love has to come from, because the more success you get with that, the more time you free up, the more money you get, and the more you get to actually do the things that you only want to do at that point.
This is true. I completely 100% agree with you. That's a really good point. All right. So now going into our speed round.
All right.
I got 3 questions for you, all pertaining to the podcast, Run, Thrive, Survive. First one I want to ask you, what is something to the audience that you are in your life now, you feel like you're just surviving, that maybe you have to change your mindset on, that maybe you have to even change a few things on that you're struggling through right now? Because we all have our daily struggles. What is something you are just surviving?
In life or business?
Let's go in your life. We know about your business.
Yeah. I would think, you talk about run, thrive, sort of like in terms of fitness, I get by. Like I'm fortunate that I don't I don't balloon up by eating. I can keep kind of a lean type of
Right.
body type or whatever, because I don't eat sugar, so I keep that. But I'm very lazy when it comes to how would my wife say this? Like, just in terms of strenuous workouts. So she's like, can you imagine if you just pushed yourself in this? I'm definitely just surviving in that area. I do what I need to get by, but I sometimes I get very frustrated with myself. Why don't I have the goals in this the
Right.
way I do in other areas?
I mean, that I feel like that's a lot of us, where we feel like we are just surviving through certain things, but you're still doing it. So I applaud you. Awesome.
I'm Yeah, I think you're giving me more credit than I'm not doing much. I'm getting by. It's something where I know the times that I've pushed through to do it. Like, I admire runners, because I'm like, you have such a dedication that I hate running. Like, you have such a dedication that I don't have. And it's one of those things you feel like you're absolutely underachieving on when you've been given you've been giving the blessing of health. Like, I can
Right.
move, like my legs work, my body works. Why am I not going further with it? So yeah, that frustrates me for sure.
Well, running, you either love it or hate it. So
Yeah.
now, next one, thriving. What is something that you feel like you are just thriving in right now, that you're very proud of, that you're excited that it's happening? What is that thing in your personal life?
Thriving. I think a lot of things are going well. Thriving. I think just in terms of relationships in my life, I think they're stronger than they've ever been. I think I have better friends. My relationship with my wife, almost 20 years married, and the fact that we still love each other so much and we want to be with each other and spend as much time together. I think it's a big success, especially in this world. You see so much
Absolutely.
divorce, you see so many relationships that people can't stand each other. We
Yeah.
live together and we're together all the time because we homeschool. So it could be a challenge. She's amazing. So having people in my life like Elizabeth and our kids and my friendships, I think that's probably it's the number one thing for me, and it's what was lacking earlier in life. It was very much a lot of acquaintances. So I think the relationship aspect of my life is what's thriving the most.
I love it. I mean, that is one big powerful thing. You just survived a global pandemic with each other and you still came out on the other side.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
many, a lot of people cannot say that right now.
it's
It
true.
was rough. It was tough. And then finally, last question, ready?
Yep.
What is a habit that you do every single day that allows you to run your life instead of letting life run you? That gives you the freedom, total life
That's a good
freedom.
question. That's a good question. Mine's a little different. Mine, I'm not always so good with habits because I don't like structure. Like, I fight back on structure
Hey,
all the time. I fight
that's
back
awesome.
on what I should be doing. But what I did something, and this is all about like how we've changed. I did something about 5 years ago that really changed my life. When you talk about relationships and I started a thing called the Hour of Giving. And every day I do this. Every day I take an hour and I write thank you notes. I leave reviews for other people's podcasts or books that
Oh,
I've
wow.
read. I connect people together. I reach out just with no expectation. Like that hour for the last 5 years has changed everything. It's changed me as a person. It's changed the relationships that I've had because, so often somebody will reach out to you. You haven't heard from them in 6 months and they want something. And I never want to be that person. And I always know when people are doing that, right? Like, oh, hey, can you do this? I haven't heard from you in 3 years. Like, how do we
Yeah.
not be those people? So I said, I just going to reach out to people just to see how they're doing. Random group of people every day, 10 people, just to check in and have conversations. The amount of relationships and even business that has come from that without even asking because people just appreciate it. There was one woman, I reached out to her just to see how she was doing. And she's like, you have no idea how much this means to me. She goes, I just found out that my husband had been abusing her kid and went to prison the night before. And she's sitting there by herself alone and crying. And she's got nobody there. And all of a sudden I reached out of the blue just to see how she's doing.
Wow.
I didn't know this. And she was
That's
like, you
powerful.
just completely just made my day. And it was like, we have no idea how that impact, that thank you note for something that they did just to send that out, to send that message. We have no idea how much that impacts people's lives. So to be able to put that out there every day is probably my favorite habit that I do.
I think you win the
I
habit of
win.
running your life. You win that one. That's the best I've ever heard. And again, it's generosity towards other people and just lifting people up. I love that. Oh my gosh.
It's
So powerful.
Well, it's funny because I was always the other person. I was always the one like, what do I get? How do I
Right.
get this? How do I? And it's like when everything that you want for yourself, if you do for others first, the reciprocity that comes from that over time is astounding.
Amazing.
And yes, I think that's it for me.
And not only it makes you feel good where there's something to say where the more you give, and it's not for your own feeling, but the more you give, you do feel full. A lot of people, we walk around, we feel like these empty human beings. And
Yep.
I hear so many conversations every day now. I just feel empty and I don't know what it is. And I think it's because we've lost human connection. We stopped giving. We're just such like materialistic, like hogs, because we're in this like self-love,
I'll be honest. I'm so tired
idea.
of the whole self-love thing. It's like, how
Yeah.
about you go love somebody else? Go help somebody else. There's a thing called helper's high that when you
Yeah.
help, it's like a drug. When you do something for somebody else, you feel better about yourself. So when people are all wrapped up in their cocoon and life sucks and I don't know what to do, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, be helpful. That's it. Go find somebody because you're going to feel better. You're going to lift up more. You're going to perk up more. And you're like, this feels good as opposed to just another selfish goal. They're
Yeah.
empty. I've been there. We interviewed John Mellencamp, who was a big 80s star. And we interviewed him and when we were in Indiana. And the reporter said, do you miss being at the top? Do you miss having, number one hits? And he was smoking a cigarette. He goes, dude, I've been to the top. There ain't nothing up there. I'm cool where I'm at.
Wow.
And I was like, that's a beautiful answer.
Oh, I
Because it's
like
not,
that a lot.
yeah, it's not all about just getting your goals and getting to the top. You get up there, it's rocky and it's lonely and it's cold,
Yeah.
do something for somebody else. And I could not have given you that answer 15, 20 years ago because I was so focused on myself.
You have to learn it. You have to learn it the hard way. And I think that's what a lot of us are doing. But
Absolutely.
along the way, we have to hear it too. So, well, Vincent, if they want to, when they want to reach out to you, where can they find your book? When can they expect this new book to come out? And where can they find more about you?
Yeah, the best place is the podcast. Best place because I do a daily short form podcast, Total Life Freedom podcast. Total Life Freedom. And I'm not sure when this is going to publish, but there's a second podcast coming out called The Wealth of Connection, where I'm interviewing people that use connection in their life to further their relationships and their business. So I'm interviewing just great people in that world. So that's coming out in January. And the website's Total Life Freedom. What else did you ask me in terms of?
Where can they find just more about you? Your website or social media?
Yeah,
are you most
Total Life
active?
Freedom website has everything. The podcast, Total Life Freedom, the best places to find me. You can connect with me there. But that's the best place.
Awesome. Well, Vincent, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.